Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great morning. If you've never joined a live before with me, I'm Lauren Conlin. This is my channel. It's Pop Crime TV, but this is my co-host, Jarrett Ferentino. Jarrett, say hello.
Hello, good morning.
Jarrett's my co-host on our show, Primetime Crime, which drops every Friday on YouTube. And I have it in the banner. So everybody go follow that at Primetime Crime Show. So yeah, I did not set up the YouTube in time to get it to stream here. So we're doing it this way. But we have two really important cases that we're going to be discussing today. Obviously, I've pinned a comment. So Jarrett and I discussed the tragic and horrific case of the Kansas moms, Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelly, on our episode last week. And I had been on this case from the very start through my own podcast, The Outlier, and also with Nancy Grace. And it just really affected me. And I have some of the most recent court docs that are a bit confusing that Jarrett is going to answer all of our questions and go over with us in a bit. But first of all, I want to discuss first and foremost, we all know that if you follow the Karen Read trial, there was a mistrial. That was the verdict, a hung jury. And a lot of people are conflicted on whether or not they are going to retry Karen Read, the Commonwealth. Now, I personally think that it's not going to happen based on Michael Proctor. And just based on the fact that I don't think they'll ever get two juries to ever agree based on the court of public opinion. And I think it's a huge waste of taxpayer money here. Jarrett, he's a former homicide prosecutor in Pennsylvania. If you guys are not familiar with him, I don't know. Jarrett seems to think that a retrial is very, very likely impossible. So, Jarrett, please tell us why you think this is possible.
Well, I've been in those conversations and I know how the DAs see the world, okay? And they believe very strongly, so strongly they've pursued Karen Read for a murder charge of John O'Keefe. The fact that 12 jurors didn't necessarily see it that way doesn't really change their mind. Remember, I think it's important to note, Lauren, Karen Read was not acquitted, which means at least one, and in reading the tea leaves of the notes that were sent back from the foreperson, more than one believed Karen Read is guilty and guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So the DAs have a lot of reasons, I think, undoubtedly they're going to pursue this case again. Number one, they believe Karen Read is responsible. That's clear. Number two, John O'Keefe was a police officer. His death was tragic. They believe Karen's responsible. They're going to pursue it. Political reasons. John O'Keefe's family is behind them. So there are a lot of things in the background here that push that DA back into the courtroom. So, it's early. I think people were prematurely popping champagne on behalf of Karen Read. And my background is as a DA, but I call both sides of the ball, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I get she was not acquitted. She did not walk out of there not guilty, okay? She walked out of there and the jury said, some people looked at this case that we can all agree did not go according to plan for the DAs and still said, despite everything I've seen, everything I've heard, all the defense lawyers chipping away, I still can't make my mind up. Or I believe she's guilty. So that's not an easy thing to live with.
Yeah, I guess, and again, Jarrett and I, we go over a lot of this on our episode this Friday, but if the O'Keefe family decides here, look, we can't do this again, what are our other options here to try to get justice for our son? What do you think those are? A wrongful death suit? I mean, I get it. They're not going to just put all this behind them, right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, so
sorry, wait. Hi, Carrie. Carrie's the best too. I just have to say hi to Carrie. Okay, go ahead.
But
yeah, say hi to Carrie. Okay.
So there are other options. Sadly, they all end up in a courtroom asking the very same people questions. So it's like, and if Karen is ultimately convicted, it helps their civil claim. So people, I'm sure your educated and informed viewers understand there are two courses here, civil and criminal courts, okay? Yes, John O'Keefe's next of kin can pursue Karen Read in a civil court, and the burden is lower there. That's by a preponderance of the evidence as opposed to beyond a reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't just lawyer words, those are significant. You could say, hey,
Yeah.
I believe the car was going in reverse 24 miles an hour. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt, but it's pretty likely here. Civilly, she could be held responsible. In criminal court, not so much. It's got to be to a reasonable doubt.
Can you read Tommy's comment? Do you see that on the screen?
Don't. What's Tommy's
Oh,
comment?
you don't see the comment? Oh, I didn't know you couldn't see the comments. Only
Jason
I can see
could
them.
see it here with me. What is
it? Okay, well, I'll just tell you. Tommy says, but you have to realize the defense cut 80% of their case as well. They didn't even bring in the Quantico phone analyst. And this is, I mean, I kind of thought the defense at that point, Tommy, I didn't think they needed to bring in all these people because I kind of thought their case was closed based on Trooper Paul and the state's own witness, the medical examiner. So that's kind of what I.
So Tommy makes a really good point. When you're in the middle of that trial, although you go in and you say, I have all these experts listed on my whiteboard, right? Who's coming in, who's not.
Yeah.
They made a game time decision. They felt that jury was ready to make a decision in their favor. So they didn't call the phone expert. However, here's that question or that comment raises another point, Tommy. And my point is this: in round two, they certainly can call that person. And in round two, the DA's better call a biomechanical engineer, in addition to Trooper Paul, that sees it the way Trooper Paul sees it and the way the DA see it, because you got to fight fire with fire. You cannot send a trooper who's taken a course against two biomechanical engineers. You just can't do that. It's just not going to go your way.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the worst thing I've ever seen. Literally the worst thing. And I don't mean to go back to all of that, to Trooper Paul, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that was traumatizing to watch. But something that we brought up on the show this morning or for Friday's episode is, what about a change of venue if they decide to do this? Would that benefit anyone? And, you know, Jarrett, you kind of were like, yeah, maybe, but I think it's going to, if it gets retried, I think it's going to stay in Dedham.
Well, they could certainly ask for it if the defense wanted to change a venue after all of the coverage. I mean, Karen Read became, like we said, a household name, but that hasn't hurt them. You know, people have looked at this. The majority of people, certainly the people we've seen online, see it the defense's way. They've looked at this and said, hey, the Commonwealth hasn't met their burden. So the pre-trial publicity for round two doesn't necessarily hurt Karen Read. And really, that's a conversation. It's truly a decision that's made by Judge Bev when they're asking the prospective jurors for round two, have you heard of the case? Inevitably, the answer is yes. And have you heard enough about this case where your mind is made up, your opinion is fixed? And if a juror sits there and says, hey, look, I know about the case. I know the claim is that she ran John over and she's charged with murder, but I can keep an open mind. That person is likely to be a juror. I
go back to the fact that every person that learns about this case, generally speaking, is one side or the other staunchly. There are very few of us that can see, but okay, I kind of see that. I kind of see this. And look, I had this epiphany the other day, and this might bother certain people. It might, I mean, maybe people don't care, but I really just don't think that the 2:27 a.m. alleged Google search matters at this point anymore, only because I just don't believe that she hit him with her car based on what I heard from the experts and the evidence and the medical examiner and the body. I'm kind of like, I don't give a shit about the 2:27 a.m. Google search anymore. So the state can stop trying to prove that it didn't happen, and the defense can kind of stop talking about it. And the defense kind of did stop talking about it. They didn't really seem to bring it up a whole lot in their closing statement, which I thought was good. So,
well, there was certainly enough about it during the trial, but you never know what a juror is really going to hang their hat on. I know, like, looking at this, obviously that's a huge issue, and it needed to be augured into the ground and developed in the trial, but there are just things that I've talked to hundreds of jurors over the course of my career. And, you know, you want them to come back and say, boy, the evidence you highlighted was exactly what did it. And you're like, and a juror will tell you some outrageous thing or something they essentially made up or concluded that wasn't even said in the courtroom. And you're like, damn, you know, how did they see it that way? So again, that was a pretty big, significant point.
And
amongst a series of big points that were made and scored by the defense, in my opinion.
Tommy just said, because you can't read these, Jarrett, he said, I'm baffled how any of the evidence was allowed in with no chain of custody. How did that happen? They can't fight that either now that it's admitted, correct?
Well, there's a thing called the law. Another good question, Tommy. So there's a thing called the law of the case. Typically on chain of custody issues, you enter into a stipulation with the other side as long as there's not an identified problem. So that becomes kind of the law of the case. However, if they want to raise that issue now in front of Judge Bev, they can make it. They haven't waived the argument. She could say, like, in her mind, she's saying nobody made this challenge before. It didn't appear to be an issue as far as compromising any pieces of evidence or anything of that nature. But the real question I think you're asking is, could that claim be made now? Yes. This trial is basically like a clean slate as far as what objections could be made. And I always go back to Bill Cosby. I was at Bill Cosby's trial when the jury hung. And then Cosby was retried and ultimately convicted. New evidence came in trial too, if you remember. The 5 other victims were able to testify about what we call in Pennsylvania 404B evidence, okay? Other women that he did this to. The first jury didn't hear that. The second jury did, and he was convicted and ultimately released for other reasons, not the merits of the case. So I use that analogy to make the point to Tommy that round 2 is a clean slate in many respects, and other evidence could come in. But here's where your hands are a little tied. Let's say Proctor was to get on the stand in trial 2, and he testified totally inconsistently to what he testified in round 1. Let's say he says something totally different. He or any witness, Trooper Paul, anybody, they get the transcript or the video of his last testimony in the last trial. And they're buried with it, or they're cross-examined with it, impeached with it. So much of your case, we were talking this morning how brutal it is when a case gets mistried because there's no closure to the families or to the parties. You're in trial for 35 days. You got to do this again. And you feel like what you did wasn't enough.
I mean, the public watching it, we're like, wait, what? I remember being like, I have no skin in the game here. And I'm like, I can't do this again. I literally cannot watch this whole thing again. But let's point out,
it's hard to get motivated too. It's hard to get yourself back into that place, you know, to go back into battle. You know that Lally's got to get himself ready to go. He's got to tweak his strategy.
He should not try it again. I don't think he should.
Well, and that's a good question too. They could make a change as far as who the lead was. So, but again, there's political and a lot of things factor into that prosecutorial discretion. So it's hard to predict.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, I'm just thinking about everything that we've discussed in terms of Proctor. And I saw last night, I think it was one of the Boston channels, that they were on Proctor's lawn, asking for comments from him and his wife about his firing, and they were rough. They said the F word to the news station. They were like, "Get the fuck off my lawn." And then his wife said, "Karen Reed is an effing murderer." And it was bad. And just like Sue just said, this is true. I really don't need to hear who sat where and who had what drink at the waterfall again. Sue, girl, I am with you. My husband wants to kill me because I've been going through and rewatching some of the testimony in bed at night. And I don't know why. He's like, "Why are you doing this? It's over." And I'm like, I'm trying to pick out certain things that I don't buy. And when I say things I don't buy, I go back to the witnesses, not saying they killed anybody, but just saying they're withholding information. Example, Alan Jackson had asked Brian Higgins on the stand something, and he said, "Were you telling the truth?" And Brian Higgins says, "I always tell the truth." And I'm like, that is the most bullshit thing I've ever heard in my life, because number one, nobody tells the truth all the time. Number two, he wasn't asking you about always. He was asking you in this one incident, and statements would show, you guys, a lot of you, Sheila, Carrie, you all love Jack Fox, just like I do. Statements would show that he's overcompensating for something and he's hiding something. So I just can't. Hold on. Some of these comments are funny. Tommy said, Sue, as long as we get accurate weather, I'll be happy. I think we can all agree it was snowing. All right. So KK405, hello to everyone in chat. Mod on Rock Chalk, True Crime, Boots on the Ground, covering Kansas mom's case. I know nothing about Karen Reed. Love Lauren. And yes, we are going to get to that, KK. And I will post, I'll put in the chat as well, Rock Chalk's YouTube, because she's awesome. She is boots on the ground. Just to wrap this up, Taryn says Jack lives rent-free in our heads. Oh, the paintings. Thank you so much. Tommy said, I've been rewatching all the pretrial hearings. They were brutal. Lally is dirty, dirty. He legit tells Bev lies upon lies. Ooh. All right. Did I miss anything? Well, Jarrett, do you want to just end Karen Reed really quickly with what you think is going to happen, or what we could possibly expect on July 22nd?
Well, July 22nd, they're going to come in, and the Commonwealth will officially note that it's their intention to retry this, and Judge Bev can set a new trial date at that point. I'm thinking like late fall, probably like late October, early November. She'll schedule the next pretrial hearing for the motions or anything that may be coming. She can also schedule, she could also just essentially receive the official notification from the Commonwealth that they intend to move forward and schedule another status conference. But look, I mean, everybody is posturing here. They're going to indicate that they're ready to go. And when they go in there, they're going to say that much. So I think we're going to have another trial here before Christmas. And I know everyone's going to say they have a year to put this on, but you have a year under the speedy trial rule, but it's not something you're going to do on day 364. These parties are ready. Your witnesses are ready. My recommendation to the prosecution, though, is get yourself a biomechanical expert this time. Yeah,
Trooper Paul blew it. Unfortunately, that guy is going to have to live his life knowing that he blew it. And not that they blew it, but the state's own, last thing I'll say, medical examiner, not helpful for their case whatsoever. But let's go on to Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelly. Gosh, this case again. I when they disappeared on March 30th, it was the day before Easter. I remember putting. Oh wait, sorry. Really quickly, Tommy, what's his opinion if the feds release more or do another dump for defense? Jarrett, real quick.
What's my opinion if the feds,
if they release more on their investigation, or
well, that's the one thing that can derail or delay round two. Good point. I mean, if more, look, we know they asked for a continuance based on that investigation, which Judge Bev denied. So if that investigation bears fruit, it can seriously impact whether or not the Commonwealth moves forward, number one, or when we see the trial. Ambitiously, I'm thinking it'll be late fall. If something comes from the feds that causes things to be delayed because new information would be discoverable, has to be shared, that's a possibility. And if it's really bad, real bad stuff, it could result in them not moving forward. And real bad stuff is witnesses charged with perjury or things of that nature. So
I'm so curious. I'm so curious about that. And not to keep talking about Brian Higgins, but he says literally in 1 minute, Alan Jackson says, why'd you leave 34 Fairview in 30 minutes? Or why'd you only stay for 30 minutes? Because I was tired. I wanted to go home. But you didn't go home after. You went to Canton PD. Oh, yeah, I had to do some administrative work. You were so tired that you had. That's why I'm just like, somebody call these people out for lying. It doesn't make sense. Okay, just because I could talk about this forever, I do want to go to Veronica Butler, Jilian Kelly, the two mothers that went missing on Easter weekend. Again, this case has haunted me for a number of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons here, they were killed by 5 people that look so demonic. They don't they don't look like they're real. They look like something out of a Rob Zombie movie, and it has haunted me. They have left 6 children total without mothers. Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelly. Veronica was just going to pick up her children innocently. Jilian Kelly was just going along with her as a court-appointed supervisor because of these custody battles that Veronica and her ex, Wrangler Rickman, had. Wrangler was in rehab at the time, and his mother, Tiffany Adams, Granny, or as Nancy Grace likes to say, Killer Granny, alleged Killer Granny, essentially had custody of these kids and was really messing with Veronica. She was just canceling shit. She was just not being cool about it, giving no explanation whatsoever. But we now know, and everyone watching knows, they were planning the murder of Veronica for a very long time. And so what I have been doing is I had printed out, a lot of these were filed June 19th. I have one of the most recent filings here. And let me, for everyone who's not aware, these 5 suspects are being charged with double murder, double kidnappings, and a conspiracy to commit murder. So their first pretrial hearing was back in May, and Jarrett and I had just discussed last week, 5 of them are now going into court together. And this is totally unheard of. But Jarrett made a really good point. As a prosecutor, can you imagine doing this 5 different times, right? Asking 5 different people the same things, 5 different of the same pretrial status hearings. Am I right, Jarrett? That would be crazy.
It would be crazy and strategically really bad for the prosecution to allow for 5 different proceedings to happen. Plus, it's very taxing on them. I mean, especially when right now, this case, there's a couple things that you have to consider. Okay. Number one, judicial economy. Does it make sense to have the same type of hearing 5 different times with 5 different defendants, but the same prosecutors? It doesn't make sense. You're talking, this will tie this court up for weeks doing the same thing when you can bring everybody in together. Now, that's on the prosecution side, why you would want to do it together. On the defendant side, you want to do it together because there are 6th Amendment rights, 14th Amendment rights. What 6th Amendment is basically the right to confront any evidence against you. That's the confrontation clause. The 14th Amendment rights we're talking about are your due process rights. Like, you have the right to be present and challenge what's being said, what's being offered against you, the charges against you. And then they also make a judicial economy argument and a prejudice argument. So in all likelihood, you're going to see these 5 tried together, unless, and one of the things we talked about was, one of them turns state's evidence or their defenses become antagonistic, where Adams is saying Grice is responsible for this, I didn't do anything, and at the same time is throwing him under the bus. When the narratives start to change, that's when it becomes extremely problematic. Imagine juggling all that in one courtroom. It's like kids that spilled milk. You know, the milk is spilled and they're pointing at each other. It's very difficult to navigate that.
Yeah, exactly. And sorry, I'm just trying to get their mug shots so I can put them up here for people that are not aware. But what's also been pretty interesting throughout this is, allegedly Tiffany Adams confessed to all of this. This is, there allegedly is a recording, and this is from an affidavit from the OSBI early on. And yes, I added Rock Chalk's YouTube as well, because she goes and she investigates on the ground. And somebody just said, the courtroom is so small, it's not safe. Someone else just said, KK, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will combine trials for all 5, just status hearings, Jarrett. Is that correct?
That is. At this point, that's as far as they're willing to go. Again, those things we talked about are the factors the judge is going to have to consider in whether or not the trials are going to be combined. The actual trial itself is another consideration. Whether or not they're going to be separated. But all of those factors we said are exactly what's going to be factored into the ultimate decision. I can't see all 5 of these folks going to trial, by the way. I think that's worth noting. But,
wait, really? What do you, but why?
I see a plea coming, but because Grice, according to the affidavit, has made an admission, Adams has made an admission. Now it's probably a matter of who gets to the table and makes a deal first. My experience. I can't see 5 defendants. They certainly have the right to, and I'm only speculating, but somebody's coming to the table for a deal here.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's really interesting. I mean, I guess if anybody was going to do that, maybe Cora Twombly. I don't know if anyone who knows the case agrees. I have a few things, but Taryn asked, do they all have indigent appointment lawyers? No. Tad Cullum appears to have hired Joy Miskell, the acquittal queen, and somebody else, I believe, who seems to cost a lot of money. And not only that, he has a very expensive divorce attorney as well. So, and yes, Sheila, you said you're not familiar with this case, but it sounds horrible. Girl, it is so freaking horrible. It keeps me up at night. It's the worst thing ever. And that's why I've been so set on continuing to put this out there. Yes. And someone said Tad has a paid one. That's correct. So speaking of indigent, a lot of people were under the impression in a lot of these Facebook groups that Tiffany Adams had a lot of money. She owned a lot of land. You know, I did see one land record that her father left her, but it was to her and a bunch of her siblings, and it was really $100 grand split between a crap ton of people. So yeah, I didn't see much of anything else. She owned a food truck at one point. What is this? Sorry, someone just said, I see Tad, Granny, and Cole going to trial. I think Cora and Paul will take pleas. Well, Jarrett believed that Paul possibly was giving information to authorities, and that is why it took them so long to arrest him. Is that correct?
Could definitely be one of the reasons. I would not buy food from Tiffany Adams' food truck. Let's just get that out there right now. But so
she doesn't own it anymore, but yeah.
I speculated that because Paul's ultimate charges came down a little later, it's possible he was providing information and they were negotiating as far as what he would be charged with. That's possible. But again, we're only speculating because none of that information is public. But I've done that. I've had one particular co-defendant with me working up the charges. We indict the 4, get them in, and then subsequently indict that other person. So that's happened. I'm not necessarily saying it's happening here. It is possible, though.
But it's possible, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
and a likely scenario because he's given when the gig is up and they're giving you the admission. You know, at that point, you say to them, "Fine, okay, you admit you did this. You're facing the death penalty. You have these 2 moms that are now dead. If you tell us in court and testify against Twombly's and Tifany, I think we can do something for you. We could take death off the table, have you plead to, or merge the sentences or something, or concurrent sentences, things of that nature, because you're giving testimony." So I don't know if that's going on, but when you have 5 co-defendants, I would hope that's going on.
Right. And Taryn, I'm putting this up there. Tifany was cooking, but I'm guessing it wasn't food. This has been a big point of speculation because of her appearance. You can look up photos of Tifany from a few years ago. She actually looks very pretty. And her mugshot, she looks like something I threw out in my garbage can 3 weeks ago that got run over by a garbage truck and then eaten by a raccoon. She looks horrible. And this is something that I've been researching, and anyone that follows me knows that she does. And I am not accusing anyone. I am not implicating anyone here, but she does have a connection to a very sketchy agent that was a witness in this case. And this guy was investigated before. And he also was the interim sheriff of Cimarron County. This person after the fact, in Cimarron County, I'm told by locals, it's very corrupt there. So this guy goes on record and actually says that he busted up all these meth houses. He has so much experience with this. And this man is friends with Tiffany Adams. They serve on boards together, hospital boards, school boards, and these are small boards. So yeah, these guys know each other. So this meth connection, again, pure speculation. This is not factual, but I think there might be some legs there, and I think this might be a whole different investigation. So, yeah, thanks, Taryn. It's okay to call a spade a spade. Look, it's okay sometimes, but you don't want to get sued, you know? I feel like, oh God, Tommy. Yeah, Tiffany has aged worse than Lally. And because I'm an idiot to these streams, I'm having trouble putting up their pictures. So if anybody wants to drop in how I do that, I'd love you forever. But I just would like Jarrett to get to some of the most recent court docs. So Tiffany filed pauper status. I did not know that was a thing. So what is pauper status exactly? I think I know what it is, but if you
So
wanna...
basically, you are declaring to the court that you are an indigent defendant and you cannot afford an attorney. And at that point, so you're swearing to that subject to unsworn falsification. And the court, once they receive that affidavit, is then, once they receive it, review it, and accept it as true at that point, appoints you an attorney. She has several attorneys. I'm looking at these filings. Looks like there's 4 attorneys working with Tiffany at this point.
Yeah.
Now, when the death penalty's on the table and a pauper's affidavit has been filed, you can bet Tiffany Adams is going to get experienced, well-versed public defenders for free, you know, on the taxpayer's dime. But that's our system.
Oh, so that's what all of this is. So OIDS will not be, they will not be her lawyers through the trial?
No, they may be, but it's indigent. Yeah, so basically they'd be paid through the court, though. I don't know how they'll necessarily work it. The bottom line is she's saying through some conduit, we had a conflict. So when you have, that's another issue why multiple defendants creates a problem. Most counties have one public defender's office, okay? So if you have 5 co-defendants and the public defenders represent one of the co-defendants, those 4 still need lawyers. You got a problem. So you go to what's called your conflict office or your office of indigence. That's how, where some places pull lawyers right out of the Bar Association with certain qualifications to take cases like this. And then the county pays them. So that's what's going to happen here. That's why, in addition to the million other reasons why having 5 co-defendants is tough, that's one of the major first hurdles you have to deal with.
So everybody should know that. Everyone following this, Tiffany had to file this so taxpayers would pay for her attorney, and that she doesn't have to. She also says on this current employment, self-employed farmer rancher before arrested, and she made $1,000 a month before being arrested. And all of her real estate has been sold or in the process to cover bank loans. I have not received any money for a 2017 Ford pickup, I guess, that she was trying to sell. I don't know. But yeah, that's what this says. She says she owns 2 American Express cards that she hasn't paid off. And yeah, that's interesting. This is, yeah, I'm kind of pissed. I get it, Jarrett. Every defendant is entitled to their constitutional rights. It just is so bothersome that she could allegedly commit a heinous murder like this and the people have to pay for it.
Well, the only thing I'll say about that is, and yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow, but for this conviction, ultimately, if they're convicted to stand, we need to have ensured that she had adequate defense counsel. You know, sometimes as a prosecutor, I felt like oftentimes I was protecting the rights of the accused more so, because if I'm looking over and there was an issue, like, you'd have to raise it to the judge. So it's important to ensure that we have a strong judicial system, but a fair one. And if their lives are going to be on the line, you know, by constitutional right, which is an important right, Tiffany Adams has a right to a defense. And if she can't afford one, we all know this, one will be appointed for you. It's one of the Miranda warnings.
Yes. And I was able to get the mugshots up on the screen. Thank you, Tommy. You're awesome. And yeah, and look at Tiffany. Look at her face. I can't. Something went very, very wrong there.
Gang who can't shoot straight.
Yeah, oh my God. So I also want to bring this up. I did hear from someone, Jarrett, that, so Wrangler is in this court-appointed rehab where he really can't have too much communication with the outside. And now you have his mother, Tiffany, who's, in jail for allegedly murdering 2 women and kidnapping them. And she's allowed to write him these intricate letters that I'm told she's writing. And he's allowed to write her back. And that's all fine, even though they're both in these places where maybe they shouldn't be communicating.
Yeah, I think so. Tiffany Adams would have the right to mail and communicate. And while in rehab, maybe they can't talk on the phone, or that facility can't receive calls from an inmate. Really, the only way they'd be able to communicate is through email of the jail, and email on the other end with Wrangler and rehab, or letters. Yeah, so there would not be a prohibition for them to be communicating. It's okay. Yeah, I'd like to see what those letters say, but it's okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious because, Wrangler is also indirectly involved with this. So why would that be allowed? Nunya just said, how is that not a conflict? And I guess I don't understand that either, because I'm like,
so she's his mother. The fact that she could communicate with her son, look, I'd like to know what's in those letters, but you really can't stop them from communicating with each other. So long as she's not attempting to influence his testimony, which would be a crime. Which is why I'm saying I'd like to see what's in those letters. But look at Casey Anthony. Her parents would come in to visit her in person. They were involved. They were witnesses in that case.
You're right.
And they would come in and meet with her. And those were often animated visits. But these folks, look, like when the cameras go off and the lights go down, they're just people in a small town, and they're going to communicate, and they're going to find a way to communicate with one another. And when we move on to other cases, and we're going to follow this one gavel to gavel, don't get me wrong, but
we are.
But there's months and months and months in between here where Tiffany's going to be reaching out to Wrangler. She's going to be talking. I've been a part of big cases, and it's always those things, and the Drexel case or the Selinsky case, and those like people still communicate. They're not going to not talk to one another.
Yeah, I'll try to find out what's going on there. And it's also interesting to point out, KK pointed this out. One of the suspect's family members was just elected sheriff in Cimarron County. And that's true. That's Cole Twombly's cousin, Clint. And it's important to note also that Clint was listed on one of the discovery motions because one of the trucks is in his name. So that's weird. Very, very weird. But I want to get to something that I have questions on, Jarrett. So these are June 27th. They were filed. Let me get the one particularly that I would like to discuss with you. And I'm curious, and I just sound so dumb if I when I talk about it without you. No, really, I do. Trust me. It's the one.
Is this the one for the transcripts?
What's that?
Is this the one for the transcripts, the records of the sealed cases? Is it
this one? Yes. Okay. So for everyone that's not aware, this one, and I can send them if anybody wants these. I'm happy to send these to you. I am not holding on to these for any reason. I can upload it, whatever, because we should all have them. But they were filed June 19th. And it says the state of Oklahoma versus Tiffany Michelle Adams, Cora Gail Twombly. That's it. Just these two. And then it says objection to motion and order for transcripts, motion to immediately stay order. What does that mean?
Okay. So what's going on here is Cora Twombly, if I understand this correctly, because we're again with 5 defendants, Cora Twombly has requested through her attorneys the transcripts of certain proceedings from the past. They look like domestic filings, parental guardianship hearings, things. And again, reading the tea leaves, you can bet these are either PFA hearings, custody hearings involving the children with Tiffany Adams. Okay. Twombly's asking for that information because her lawyers, through her lawyers, have claimed it has relevance to the trial. Or to the case.
Yeah.
And ultimately what led to it, which we know that. The fact of the matter is Veronica had supervised visit rights, okay?
Right. Yep.
The custody of Tiffany, the custody Tiffany had over Veronica and Wrangler's children was contentious, and it's been going on for years and years and years. I'm going to speculate here, okay?
Yep.
I am sure Tiffany made a compelling case to her co-conspirators of something about these kids and why this killing had to happen.
Why they had to do it. Yeah.
Yes. And I don't want to speculate too much. Everybody who knows a little bit about this case knows there's been some innuendo about relatives involved in Veronica's family or things of that nature. But whatever it was, okay, was compelling enough for Tiffany to lobby for their support and aid and co-conspiratorship in the killing of Veronica and Jilian. So all of that information, if that in some crazy world becomes a defense, is the records of those proceedings becomes relevant to your case. So there were a couple of filings. Number one, Cora Twombly wants those records. She was granted access.
Tiffany does too, right?
Tiffany is saying there was a concern that if the records were released, they're sealed. At one point, I know you were looking into these too. They became sealed, okay?
Yes, they did.
You cannot get them unsealed unless there's an order of court. There was an order of court, and in that order of court, it suggested that they were going to become unsealed and part of this record. And then the DA said, whoa, like if you're going to give this over, give a copy of it to us, unseal it and provide it to the DA. Do not make it part of the record because the public can see it. And it involves minor children and guardianship. And these things are typically, the sanctity of them is very protected. So the bottom line is here, Twombly has asked for access to the domestic filings related to this case. And that's Wrangler and Veronica's filings, Tiffany's filings, because no doubt it's going to involve what really led to this killing.
So, okay. That's exactly what I needed to hear. And just for everyone else following it, I think you might be the same as me, like KK405, at Rock Chalk. These cases, it's the Cimarron County case, FD 2011-19, 2012-4. Yes. So all of those are what we had, a bunch of us web sleuths. We had all initially gotten a hold of these. And then, a few of us saved them and then they were sealed. Totally get that. I can see why Cora would want that. But something that she also wants that's sealed concerns the divorce of Tad and Tracy Cullum. What would that have to do with anything? And if anyone in the comments knows what that would have, I'm just confused there.
Well, again, I don't know what it would have to do with that other than there are claims made in that divorce that have some relevance to what led to, there's got to be some casual connection to these proceedings. And that was part of the issue too, because the state said, look, I know you're asking to unseal these. We need to know what is the reason you're asking the court to unseal them. What's the connection? Like, where does it end? We're just going to start, asking, Tad's divorce. He was sued by a creditor. Like, show me where the connection is. Even if it's called a proffer, even if it's a vague thing. It's like, hey, Tad's divorce. Tad got divorced because he was involved with Tifany, something like that.
Right,
and that's the claim that's made. So, they're co-conspirators. It was Tad and Tifany, again, speculation, that sought the assistance of the Twombleys or Grice here. And again, it's only showing how far back their relationship may go. I don't know, but there's got to be a relevant connection to the crime itself to justify unsealing and providing those records to the 5 defendants in the state.
Okay. And then something else that we have here is, so this was filed, let me see. Okay. This one is, did we just do no, this one is June 27th. It was filed. The state's response to defendant's objection, motion, or fraternity. This one just basically says the state has no objection to the referenced transcripts remaining unfiled in these criminal cases in Texas County. The state is unaware of transcripts ever being filed in the court file of any criminal case.
That just means, like we said, they wouldn't become public once they're unsealed. They would just be provided to the parties and remain confidential at that point.
Okay, got it. And then it says, furthermore, the said transcripts contain statements of defendants that may be relevant towards guilt or punishment. District 1, which is, that has a reputation of and practice of providing full and open discovery. And the state would ask the court to overrule the defendant's motion and provide said transcripts to the parties per the court's original order. Okay.
So that's just making sure the state gets a copy of whatever the lawyers get, the defense attorneys get.
Why do they make it so complicated? Why can't they just say that?
Because that's how lawyers write. What they're really saying is, if you can't get them, give them to us. So
I'm like,
have them. So,
yeah, I'm very confused on that. Okay, well then I need this one. Okay, the order. So this one was filed June 19th, Jarrett. Order
June
grant
18th was crossed out and 19th written in. Did you see that?
Why? Yeah. Why is that?
Because I don't know. It was clocked in wrong, I think.
Weird. So. Okay. Well, this one says on Wednesday, May 15th, the examining magistrate in these cases issued a first discovery order containing the following: discovery in these cases. It is therefore ordered, counsel for the defendants in these cases are allowed to view and inspect any and all items of physical evidence at specific times and places to be agreed upon by the parties. So, I mean, I think that we had discussed this in our last episode, that discovery for this case is going to take forever. It's literally going to take forever.
We discussed this and we were 100% right of what's going on here. Mm-hmm. The magistrate, so there's two hearings. There's a preliminary hearing. That is a constitutional hearing that basically says, hey, if you're going to be held in jail, we need to at least appear before a judge and meet the standard. It's more likely than not you did this and you're the person responsible, so you go back and sit in jail. That's your preliminary hearing, not that beyond a reasonable doubt standard. Okay. That preliminary hearing happens in the months immediately after the arrest. Typically, it's obligated to happen sooner, but they typically get delayed in cases of this magnitude. The magistrate judge has uncharacteristically and unusually ordered the prosecution to participate in all this discovery before the preliminary hearing, which that's not typically how it goes, because you're not entitled to all of that discovery, even under rule, I think it's 22 OS, or Oklahoma's rule of discovery says you're allowed to have that information at your formal arraignment once you get to the big courthouse, okay? You don't get that stuff at the preliminary hearing. That's the rule in Pennsylvania, and that's the rule pretty much across the country. This magistrate was saying, not only do you provide laboratory information and all this stuff way ahead of schedule before the preliminary hearing, you're to arrange with the defense to meet and look at all the physical evidence. Now, that's a heavy lift for the prosecution to meet that. It's premature for that to happen. And as a DA, you would say, hey, we don't want to set this precedent. We're going to have to be doing this for every case coming forward, too. It's something that attaches later. Certainly the defense is well within their right to ask for it, but it was an overreach on the part of the magistrate to compel all that prior to a preliminary hearing. And the district judge slapped that magistrate's hand a little bit, stripped out. If you read those things, it's like paragraph 1 and 2 are out, and we reform paragraph C to say this, and you'll get the discovery when normal people get the discovery after arraignment.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that's helpful. And Jarrett and I also kind of said, or Jarrett said this actually, and I was like kind of destroyed, but I totally understood that with everything going on in this case, all of the evidence, all of the people, and look, you've still got names like Lacey and Barrett Cook, and you've got other names of people that probably know something that, or maybe even knew something that was going to happen that haven't been arrested. Who knows if they're going to be arrested? They're certainly being looked into right now. So this case might not go to trial officially until like 2026, I think you said.
Yes. I hate to say that, but I mean, I don't see it going anytime within the next year and a half, only because it's tough if there was one defendant. With 5 and all, look at all the motions just over discovery. I mean, we're looking at this stuff just again, I say this, and I say it about the Kohlberger case, and I've said this about cases I've had. The most important thing isn't get it fast, it's get it right.
Yeah, definitely.
I
And
know it sucks, but you know what?
I agree with you.
The road to justice isn't pretty, and these folks are sitting in a jail cell. They're not out like Karen Reed is out. These
Yeah.
folks sit. These are non-bailable offenses. Um, so we wait for justice, and it's going to take time, though. I'm thinking 2026.
Well, and it's funny because it's not funny. Sorry, that was a horrible choice of words, but it's interesting because to most of us that have followed this, it seems pretty cut and dry. However, let's remember there was an extension here, a 6-month extension on whether or not they could release the manner of death that these poor mothers how they died. So we actually don't really know what happens. I mean, or what happened, I should say. So gosh, I mean, this is when we actually find out what happened, I think that could change things as well. Who did what, who was responsible for what, whatever.
And like we have defendants who've made admissions, at least that's what's claimed in the affidavit, and we don't know that they were, they
Mhm.
could challenge those too. I mean, their lawyers could challenge those, and it does seem cut and dry. But look at it
Yeah.
this way: just the pretrial phase, the discovery phase, getting into the courtroom and putting this on. If all 5 defendants offered no defense and said nothing, it's still a heavy lift to put on a case like this. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
with little or no offerings from the defense side. It still takes a little bit of time, and I'm telling you, realistically, 2026.
Okay. Well, just because I know Jarrett has to go in a minute, does anybody have any specific questions that they want asked? And while you guys think of that, I have a comment up there. Somebody said KM needs to be looked at. Yeah, girl, that's who I was talking about before. Who you know what I'm talking about? The agent that busted up all the meth houses and claimed that yeah, he's really good at that, and I feel like I have a hunch at who he was giving it to distribute, but that's speculation. And we all know never get high on your own supply. It looks like Tiffany Adams didn't really listen to that, but again, speculation. So I'll take that comment down. But yeah, okay. Well, hopefully we've made things a little bit clearer, or Jarrett, I should say, has made things a bit clearer when it
Maybe
comes
we
to
made
some
it
of
more
these.
complicated. I hope not.
No, I don't think you did at all. I think honestly, I think and oh, it's I want to point out that the judge had said they are going to have these pretrial hearings, I believe, every third Wednesday of the month.
Which is good.
So,
Which is good. The judge is going to continue to hold the parties' feet to the fire. That's good. They're not going to get lost in this discovery mess. That doesn't mean it's going to be quick, but I'm glad to hear that. And I've been on cases where, when you go into those proceedings, the judge is going to give you a to-do list. You're going to have to be accountable for what's happened in the
yeah,
last 30 days. And that's a really good sign. So it's a sign
yeah.
that things are going to move a little bit more efficiently maybe than they are in Idaho.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I really hope so. And something else that some of the locals pointed out to me was that there are more God's misfits in this area, in this county, and a lot of people are kind of nervous to come forward and share. So it's kind of sad. And Rock Chalk just asked Jarrett where you're from. Jarrett is from Pennsylvania. He was the ADA in Pennsylvania for 20 years. He just retired basically 2 months ago.
2 months ago.
How many?
So in April, after 20
Okay.
years. So
Wow.
but I'm in northeastern Pennsylvania. I have a law practice here. In addition to being a DA, I've run a law firm too. So I was doing 2 jobs, but I'm here in northeastern Pennsylvania. But I've had cases pretty much everywhere, and really enjoy doing this now. This is a lot more fun than actually having to prosecute cases.
Well, I'm going to brag on you. So you guys can all watch Jarrett on Crime Nation on the CW. He's currently on like 4 or 5 episodes for that show. And if you know the case of Brittany Drexel, he was the Drexel family attorney. So he's on Dateline, 2020 talking about that case. You can find him. And obviously you can find him on our Friday show, Primetime Crime. But really quick, Lauren, Kevin McIntyre, that's the agent that I was discussing. He's suddenly not on Brady Giglio list. He was listed in the beginning of the case. How might that occur? This is what I had said at the beginning, Jarrett. He was on the witness list because he worked for the Cimarron County Sheriff's Office, and now he's not. I did not know that either. But again, I thought he shouldn't have been on the list to begin with, and I actually called the OSBI and said something, and I was like, he has connections to Tiffany Adams. Why the hell is he a witness? But that could be why.
Well,
right?
he could have been taken off for a bunch of different reasons, but any of the 5 defendants or the prosecution could call him. So because he's not on a particular list doesn't mean he's off the hook.
Okay. And someone said Ferentino's from Pennsylvania, and Rock Chalk says Coburger area.
Yes, Coburger. Yes. So Coburger was found and born and raised about 20 minutes from me in the Pocono region.
Oh, wow. I don't think I knew that, actually.
Yeah. So that's why that was kind of I've done a lot of stuff on the Coburger case, and it was because he was found here, and for a time there was a lot of focus in this region on him.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Well, everybody, Jarrett and I plan to stay on this case. Obviously, like if you follow me, you know I've been on it since the beginning. I've roped in Jarrett he's been so instrumental for me in explaining everything that I need to know about these documents, because I am glued to them. I am so following this. I just think justice cannot come soon enough. And it guts me. It destroys me once again that these kids are without a mother. So again, we will plan to do another live. But we'll also continue the coverage on our show. We talked about this case a bit for our show coming out on Friday. You can see it in the banner at Primetime Crime Show on YouTube. Please, everyone, go and like and subscribe that. You can follow Jarrett on Twitter. I'll put his handle right here.
Like and subscribe to YouTube. My little girl checks every day and tells me how many people we have. Or she'll say,
"No way! Oh, that's so cute." Okay, so like and subscribe to the Primetime Crime Show. It's right there. I also put his Twitter if you don't have that. Oh yes, Rock Talk. I love Melanie Little. She's awesome. And then this is my YouTube. You can also subscribe to this one as well. So everyone, thank you so much. Like I said, we'll be back, and we can't wait to cover this and just, God, get justice, right?
We'll get there.
Yeah, we will. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Sue.